What's up, ladies and gents, Noli here, and welcome to another Payday 2 video. Today I'm going to be reviewing the John Wick Weapon Pack DLC for you guys. It's been out for just over a week and I've had enough time with all the weapons and features in this particular weapon pack to give, I'd say, a fully comprehensive review. It's still retailing on Steam for $5 if you want to pick it up, but I'd wait till the end of this video to fully make that decision. As with most weapon packs, I generally feel waiting till sales is a better way for the casual Payday audience to pick up these particular DLCs. They're nowhere near as essential as some character packs and most heist DLCs are. So that's the same case here, but there's quite a few little details that I really want to get into depth about. Now, my original intent was to make separate weapon reviews for all of the 3 weapons released in this DLC, 4 if you include the Akimbo Contractor Pistols alongside the single one. However, when it came to reviewing the Desert Fox, I realized it was a pretty painful experience because it was a very similar video to the previous one I just done on the Contractors, where literally I look at the weapon, say this is pretty good, and then I put it up next to a weapon that already exists, admittedly not in the vanilla game this time, in a sniper pack, and say, well, they're so similar, I really don't see the point in it. And that's a very frustrating feeling, and I think that's really the story of this DLC. I am going to start with positives first, but my overall opinion of it is this DLC is full of a lot of side grades, a lot of weapons with very small adjustments to ones that already exist in the game, be it in vanilla or DLC. And as such, it's not nearly as valuable as other DLCs that have added some very unique playstyles and some very powerful weapons. So definitely doesn't get my vote for top weapon pack, let me put it that way. Now, as I said, let's start things off with some positives, and that would be the UMP-45 SMG, which, as we imagined, was the primary selling point for this particular DLC, and that is with good reason. Though the weapon is really similar to the already existing Krinkov SMG in terms of statistics, as you saw if you watch my original video, link to both of those 2 weapon reviews is in the description below if you want some greater detail on those weapons and the comparisons I'm making. But if you watch that video, you would see that the weapon is infinitely more accurate and stable than the Krinkov, and as such, its similar damage and rate of fire means that it's actually just putting out much more consistently, especially over range. This thing is a monster at taking out snipers over distance. It's a fun weapon to use. It feels like the UMP-45 you've used in other games, and I think that nostalgic feel gives it another edge over the top, and it's definitely the best part of the John Wick DLC. And again, it doesn't come to me as a surprise, but it's an SMG, don't forget that, so it's never going to be as strong as some of the other options in that secondary class. Explosives are very popular now. You know, we've just gone through a meta where the bows were incredibly popular, some of which can be found in that secondary category, and shotguns will always be a fan favourite. So the SMGs sort of fall down in last place, even behind pistols, which a lot of people still enjoy using. So that puts it in a very frustrating place, because though it's one of the top in class, maybe number 1, it's still, you know, not going to be the best option for your hardest difficulties, which everyone is currently raving about, because obviously One Down was just released, and so it doesn't fit perfectly into those builds. It's not a bad weapon by any stretch of the imagination. As I said, SMGs have been buffed over time and are pretty much up there. You know, the weapon balance in the game is not bad at all. There are very few completely non-viable weapons in the game, and the UMP is a good weapon, but again, its weapon category does let it down a little bit. Even in terms of potential skills you can run alongside it, there are other better options out there for that secondary class, though this weapon is loads of fun and definitely the best part of the DLC, and I think something that fans of the gun and fans of John Wick will enjoy playing around with. So there we go, that's the primary positive we have in this DLC. The second, surprisingly enough, is actually the throwable, which I was very concerned about, because it is a single target throwable. We've got a few of those now, and overall those have not been nearly as powerful or even as fun to use really as the explosive throwables. This one, however, is very much so potentially the best in that single target throwable class, which is viable and has a big old use over on those harder difficulties where often the crowd control you get from the grenades is pretty minimal because you're just not doing enough damage. You know, the new concussion grenade is loads of fun to mess around with and can be fantastic on those difficulties, but really you're looking for throwables that can take out the big enemies, and for a while that was the javelin that was added way back in the chivalry pack, but that weapon has recently received quite a hefty nerf, and so the sort of unwieldliness of it means that it's not my personal preference of throwable if I'm going again for that single target pick-upable style. Instead now it is definitely the throwing knife. One of the biggest pros of the throwing knife is you actually get to carry 6. The throwing knife stats are actually immensely similar to the throwing axe we saw in the Biker Pack DLC, and that's not a bad thing. That axe is very strong with certain crit builds. You can just throw them at skull dozers, don't even have to aim for the headshot because obviously you get the crits anyway, which gives you the headshot multiplier, and you'll just get rid of skull dozers on Death Wish. Now, one down is a bit of a different beast. It's not necessarily something you can do with those inflated health bars, but it's still a potential strategy you can try out. However, currently, armored builds are what are definitely in favor, so instead what you're going to want to do is blast that helmet off the bulldozers with, you know, your explosive or a fast fire rate weapon, and just throw a quick throwing knife in there. It's got 1100 base damage, which is really hefty. It's 10 times the shuriken. Obviously, it doesn't have that additional poison effect, but it really will work nicely to take out those enemies. And I found, especially when using some of these weapons, one of the problems that I failed to mention about the UMP45, though I did mention quite heavily in the video, is its issues with ammo. These particular throwables definitely deal with those problems very well, much better than your explosive throwables can, because you can just use them like a primary, like a single fire primary, just take out single targets with those awesome headshots. Really good damage. The only downside it's got next to the throwing axe is that it takes ever so slightly longer to actually release. It has a throw delay of 1 second, I think, as opposed to 0.5. Could be wrong about those stats, but that is the only downside of it, really, up against the throwing knife, and you get double, up against the throwing axe, I should say, and you get double the number of throwing knives, clocking in at 6. So this is the sort of best-in-class throwable that you can pick up again. Without a doubt, I would say the throwing knife, and one of the best parts of the John Wick DLC pack, believe it or not, because it was not something I was excited about, but it is one of the draws to this DLC, I imagine, for those of you who want the absolute most meta builds. So next up, I'd say we're going to actually discuss the other two weapons, because they're not bad. They're not bad at all. They have excellent stats. They've got beautiful models. They look so good. In fact, that's one thing I really want to stress in this DLC. It oozes a lot of style. The weapons feel good to use. They look great on your screen. And that is a pro of this DLC, I have to say. Overkill did a fantastic job getting the likenesses in-game and designing them really well. However, I'm going to review them both together, the Contractor Pistols, the Akimbo, and the single one. As we watched in the previous video I made, they're just the cross kills with a tiny adjustment. The cross kills have a greater amount of ammo overall and have generally higher just about accuracy and stability stats, whereas the Contractor Pistol has a much better mag size modification, meaning you can fire more bullets without reloading, and that is the difference between the two. They feel so similar. Alright, the Contractor looks pretty nice, but to be honest, so does the cross kill. So there's really no way to decide between these two weapons. They're so similar. One already exists in the game. Why would you ever want to pick up the Contractors, really, unless you were looking for, the throwing knife or the UMP that I've already said are the top things within this DLC. So those particular pistols, even though Overkill did the sensible thing and also gave us an akimbo format, it's also identical to the cross-kill akimbos. It's a real pain. It's frustrating to have such a similar feeling weapon in a DLC. I'm not saying it should be better than the cross-kill pistols. I don't believe in the power creep from DLCs. What I would say is make them different, make them feel different, make it fit a different purpose, and generally these do not at all. And the exact same thing can be said for the Desert Fox Sniper Rifle. Again, I love the aesthetic of this weapon, and it does give it an edge over the Platypus Sniper Rifle, which is the one that it is so similar to. Yeah, the aesthetic's lovely, it makes the gun feel really nice to shoot, and I've had a great deal of success with this weapon. It's not a bad sniper, one of the top snipers in the category if you enjoy that bolt action, pretty high sniper damage weapon. You know, I for one prefer the single fire snipers. I get a bit more use out of them. I feel I can take the damage hit because of the faster fire rate and general sort of wieldability of those weapons. That's definitely not a word, but hey, let's roll with it. But here with the Desert Fox, we just have a virtual carbon copy. The only difference is the Platypus has slightly higher overall accuracy stats, which literally means nothing if you have a general sniper build on, because you're going to get free accuracy points with that build, especially when standing still. Because, you know, if you're using a sniper, you're going to build single fire skills. You may as well. It'd be ridiculous not to. And that's what you're going to do with the Desert Fox. And as such, you get that 100 accuracy, which most snipers will reach. So the pro that the Platypus has doesn't matter. The pro that the Desert Fox has, it has a much higher concealment stat. Without a doubt, it can fit much better in concealment builds, which is a pro. It definitely is. Having a weapon in a DLC that can fit in different builds and different playstyles is worthwhile. It's a separator, it's a differentiator. It makes the DLC more worth it. But currently, concealment builds are not the way people want to go, and that is for good reason. You can actually see in the gameplay footage, when I use the Akimbo pistols and the Contractor secondary, I'm actually using a dodge build, and you can just see how much weaker it is than when I'm using the sniper with a armored adrenaline sort of frenzy style build. So that's a frustrating one as well. You know, the one pro it has is that much better concealment stat, and it's very difficult to get any good use out of it, especially in the current meta. So there you go, you got two identical guns. Alright, one in my eyes looks a little nicer and feels a little nicer because of it. But that is not reason enough to purchase a DLC, if you ask me. And again, there's just not enough differences here to warrant a purchase, I imagine, for anyone but the most hardcore audience. That's the general opinion I am coming to here. So there's a couple more things you get in this DLC. I've reviewed all the weapons in the weapon pack, but you do receive some masks which come through the unlocking of achievements, which sadly are incredibly bland. They generally entail use one of the weapons in the DLC pack on a heist and or kill people with that weapon on the heist. The only slightly different one is the murky water with the throwing knives, which is actually a frustrating one to do because basically you have to do the murky water heist twice in a row to unlock it, which I didn't really fancy doing, but hey, it was very easy to do, and as such the masks I should say, mask patterns and materials are really easy to unlock, which is, for many I imagine, a pro. It means that if you do pick up this DLC, you are going to get the cosmetics alongside it. But I like to see slightly more inventive achievements in the, paid achievements we're getting in the DLC packs. It's a little frustrating for me. As far as the masks are concerned, they're all really nice, I think. I do like the fact that the design aesthetic on each one is a little bit different. Some of them are actually quite funny. I am a huge fan of the Mustang one, I believe. It's got a nice little design to it, and for whatever reason your mouth and chin are visible. It's a nice look, even without any customization. As far as the materials are concerned, those are also really nice. I really like the tire texture. And there's a more psychedelic club one, which is also really nice. And then, again, the patterns are all really nice, really good customizations. Don't have a problem with these at all. I am a massive fan of Daisy's and the John Wick face one. It doesn't customize that easily, but on the few masks it works with, it works well. So there you go. That is the review generally of the cosmetics. It's very difficult to review cosmetic sets because, everyone has different opinions on these things, but generally I think it's agreeable that Overkill has done a reasonable job. I'd say overall, the best part of this DLC is the aesthetic behind it. They've designed it really well, fits in with John Wick, and if you are a massive fan of Payday 2, B, a massive fan of John Wick, or C, a massive fan of any of the particular weapons added in the game, they're very nicely designed, they're very true to life, and this DLC is for you. Anyone else, I would say this one is definitely a miss, because despite the fact the cosmetics are really nice and the aesthetic of the weapons are generally top tier, that's not reason enough to buy a DLC for me. It's all about mechanics. What do you get in a DLC? Is there a new playstyle? Is there a best-in-class weapon? Yeah, it's frustrating when you have to purchase a best-in-class weapon, but at least it's a draw to make that DLC better reviewed. At the end of the day, the review comes down to two things: the fun you're going to have playing it, and how much it's going to change your Payday 2 experience. And I'd say virtually nothing in this DLC will do that for you, which is a shame, but there is an audience for it. I definitely don't think it's a terrible DLC. I just don't want Overkill creating these mass-produced weapons, these side grades. Sometimes they're okay, especially when given out for free, but they have to be big side grades. They have to have a big, a difference between them. You could go for a ridiculous sniper that has very similar stats here and excels particularly in one area, but for whatever reason it's got ridiculously low accuracy, so you better be using it like more of a shotgun. That's how you design a weapon with similar stats, but with a different overall feel, and that's not what Overkill has done here, which is a shame. And overall, I feel like this DLC gets roughly a 5 out of 10. It's bang on average. There are features that you will enjoy, and it definitely is worth picking up on those really cheap sales. But, it's one of the weakest ones I feel we have seen, especially as far as weapon packs are concerned, because some of them are massively meta-changing. This one changes very little and is a just for fun. That's for watching this video, guys. I hate to be so negative for such a long time, but I feel I've been reasonably fair on this DLC. I had fun playing around with it, and I've also had a lot of fun playing around with Payday 2 in general recently. I've been a little bit off color recently, slightly ill, so I haven't made a video, but I have been playing a lot of the games. There's a massive amount of gameplay footage saved up over the next couple of days. We're in the Halloween season. The first Halloween update dropped. We're expecting something massive for the heist. Overkill has really hyped it up for us this year. Can't wait to show that off to you guys, and I will do so as soon as it drops. Thanks for watching this video, ladies and gents. I will see you all in the next one.